There are 8 million student athletes every year that graduate high school that play sports, and there's only 500,000 roster spots. There are 7.5 million kids that would love to go play at a school, even if it's on their second tier team. And guess what? Their parents would actually pay. They just keep paying what they've been paying their whole lives, which is tens of thousands of dollars for them to actually get coached and to grow as an individual. I think that's another way for athletic departments to do something that is hiding in plain sight, and it's good for everyone involved.
Welcome to the Navigating Sports Business podcast, where we uncover insights from the most prominent leaders in our industry. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Drew Weatherford, former Florida State quarterback and founding partner at Weatherford Capital, and he's got his hands all over the collegiate space, and in particular, potential investments with athletic departments. So really grateful for you to join today, Drew. Thank you for being here.
AJ, great to be with you. I've been a fan for a long time, especially with all the great work that you've done for my alma mater over the last several years during a pretty interesting time. I'm so honored to be on the show with you and look forward to the conversation.
Ooh, well, I love compliments, so I'll take that. No, I'm actually lying. But the truth is, I would love to talk about Florida State. So yeah, because I see all kinds of paraphernalia behind you. So I love it. You're still a proud Seminole. Yeah.
I mean,
Anything for you?
Shaped who I was. I grew up a big fan when I was a kid. I'll never forget Coach Bowden came and spoke at my church when I think I was 8 years old. And I was born in 85. So I was kind of born right at the beginning of their run. And it was a pretty easy team to like, right? Not only because of the coach, who's an incredible human being. They don't make them like him anymore, but also just they were a fun team to watch. They were really good. I think they were in the top 5 for 14 straight years in a row. So it was quite a dream come true to be able to actually go play at FSU, and I'll never forget it and forever be grateful.
Are there any of those moments from your playing days that really stand out to you?
There are a few.
Any specific?
The first one was actually just having Coach Bowden in my home. He was notorious for being really good when he got in the living room and being able to close parents and student athletes. And frankly, it kind of felt like having a family member over. I'll just never forget. I'm from this huge family. There's 7 boys, 2 girls. So big dinner table. I think it was pretty surreal to just have him in my home around the table. And frankly, the way he made everyone feel, I don't think we talked about football once, and he left and it was kind of a done deal. So he lived up to his reputation. It just felt right. And he was an honor. He was an honor to play for, that's for sure.
Now, were you a big time recruit? Because I have heard stories about him just seamlessly fitting in with a Southern family and things like that. So was he fighting to win your commitment?
Yeah. I was fortunate to have some older brothers that played before me, which was great. So I got a sense of what good looked like and what hard work looked like. And so they kind of paved the way for me. But I was really one of the first big recruits to ever come out of my high school, to be as highly touted as I was. Coming out of high school, I grew up in a kind of a small town north of Tampa, Pasco County. I went to a small high school called Land O'Lakes High School, which up until that point, there was actually my receiver who was a year older than me, which I'd like to think he was an incredible athlete, but we both helped each other get to where we ended up. But he went to the University of Minnesota, and then I went to FSU right after that. And then, to be honest, there were just a lot of athletes that started coming out of that school. And I'm a big believer in sometimes you have to see things in order to really know what it means to be good or to be great. And once it's your choice of whether you're going to work that hard or not. And so it was cool to see what happened. But I started as a freshman in high school, which is unique. My older brother was on my team. My first completion from line of scrimmage was to my brother, Sam. And I was a top 5 quarterback coming out of high school. I was an Elite 11 kid, and so was able to go out to California with Bob Johnson and all those guys. And it was me and Rhett Bomar and Cornelius Ingram, who ended up playing tight end at the University of Florida. He was kind of a pretty freaky athlete. And so, yeah, I was offered as a sophomore by my first offer was from Auburn. And it's funny how it works. It's like once you get the first big offer, they kind of all start rolling in. And that first offer really came, I was pretty unknown at that time. And I just went to camp and had a great camp. And there were some big recruits there that they were paying a lot of attention to. And I balled out. And people were like, oh my goodness, who is this kid? Offered me kind of before I left. And then it wasn't 30 days later that most every other Power 4 program kind of followed behind suit. So it was a pretty fun experience in high school for sure.
Do you think you're attending Florida State if it's 2025 when there's NIL involved and let's say Bobby Bowden's retired? Yeah.
It's a really good question. I don't know. As loyal as I was, and it was a big dream of mine, if there was real money involved and Ohio State, for example, or Michigan or someone else, I like to think that I would have still gone there, but I can't say for certain that would have been the case, which is interesting to think about. It's interesting. It's just become it's so much more of a business today than it used to be. I actually had some mentors of mine that played at FSU that told me when I was coming out that I shouldn't go there.
Really? Why? What was the reason?
It was, frankly, where Coach Bowden was in his career. I graduated in 2008. He retired in 2010. So it's kind of on the back end of his career. And the offensive coordinator was his son. And they weren't convinced that he was the right guy for the job. Mark Richt, who was at Florida State, had gone to Georgia. And so they really wanted me to go to Georgia to go play for the guy they play for. So I'll leave those individuals.
I was just going to say, give me that list. I'm taking that to Michael Alford.
One name. But it was a very emotional decision for me. I think most kids now make way more practical decisions. Who's the offensive coordinator? What's the offensive line look like? What does the receiving core look like? Where Florida State during that time was like, they were kind of the Alabama, and you just assumed they were always going to be great. And you just assumed the offensive coordinator was going to be great because they had been great for so long. And I kind of got there at an interesting time. Like things were a little unstable when I arrived.
Did anybody make any offers that didn't fit with NCAA rules at that time? I mean, if you're a top 5 recruit, people had to be offering money, jobs.
Yes, they did. Not as frequently as you would have thought for a couple reasons. I think one, everyone knew that I was so likely to go to FSU. Right. Because I was a fan for so long. And honestly, even though I came from pretty humble beginnings, frankly, I think because of the way I looked, they didn't think I necessarily needed it, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Huh.
Being a white kid from kind of like a suburban area. I mean, there's 9 kids in my family, right? We did not have much money. So I would go as far to say we were poor when I was young, and we were like lower middle class when I was in high school and in middle school. But I think I had brothers that played in college before me. And so I think it was a combination of factors that I didn't get a lot thrown at me before. And frankly, I didn't get a lot thrown at me while I was at school, interestingly enough. And I don't know if it's just I put off a vibe like I didn't need it or didn't want it, or because I was kind of I'd like to pride myself on being like a high character, high integrity person, that people wouldn't come at me with it. Not to say that I didn't get a free beer while I was in school, because that happened, right? Every once in a while I'll never forget showing up to like Moe's, like the little burrito shop, and the guy there would be like trying to give me food. And I'm like, no, I want to pay for the food. He's like, no, just take it. I'm like, no, I want to pay for the food, but there's like people in line. It's awkward. Yeah. And then you're just like, all right, well, I'm going to take my Moe's burrito and just go eat so I don't make a scene. Oh, but other than that, seriously, which I think is a bit unique, I think most people that were as highly recruited as I was, dealt a lot more with it. I didn't, interestingly enough. So how the world has changed.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I have some stories from southeastern part of the country and different era with a couple of guys who are willing to talk about when they go to a different school. And yeah, I'm really surprised, but that's a real positive thing, right? And I can understand being a big fan of Bobby Bowden and wanting to follow, even if he was at the end of his career. I mean, what a run, what a character. You could say he built that athletic department in many ways, right?
That was like, I think, one of the first case studies around a football program becoming great and then therefore a university following behind.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so most people in the FSU Seminole Nation would accredit him to being as much of a part of like the university growing to where we are today, which we're a top 20 public institution, which is wild. That was not,
Yeah.
we weren't even close to that when he started, or frankly, or even when I got there in 2004. But that played a big role in that for sure.
Yeah. There's no question. It's having worked with Florida State, it's actually kind of refreshing that there's a singular focus. It's very clear. The expectations are to compete and grow at the highest level. That's academically, the progress of the university, applications, enrollment, on-field success. A lot of universities still, especially now with all the changes, right? This sort of push and pull of where they should be and where their priorities should be. So yeah, it's I think it's a positive for Florida State. It's very clear.
We have some great leadership from our
Yeah.
President McCullough to our chairman, Peter Collins, to our athletic director, A.D. Alford, and a very supportive board. What's unique about us is I believe everyone but one person graduated from FSU that's on our board.
Yeah.
And that was just recently. For a long time since I've been on the board, literally every person on our board was actually a graduate from the institution, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, it's been really good, honestly, working with them. And you could even go further down the executive ranks. Your general counsel, she went to Florida State. People care. That's right. Yeah, like people care, which is it's a difference maker for sure. So you humble beginnings. Family doesn't have a lot of money. Is it a coincidence here that you and your brother are in private equity?
Yeah, I actually, yes, I didn't grow up knowing what private equity was. My father was a commercial real estate broker, and my mom homeschooled us. So she was a stay-at-home mom. She homeschooled for 25 years. It's funny. I feel like as she got more and more worn down, we went to school earlier and earlier. So like the oldest in our family is a girl. She was homeschooled all the way through high school. My brothers were homeschooled up until high school, and they started going. And then I think I was the first one to start going. I'm number 4 of 9. I was the first one to start going in like middle school. So it's kind of like slowly but surely, but
Get out here.
a lot of work. And we were very fortunate to just be raised by just wonderful parents who really cared about each of us individually and kept things pretty simple. Just the importance of being high character, high integrity, hardworking individuals was paramount. My dad would literally every time he'd drop us off for school, he'd ask us a question, which we would roll our eyes about, which is like, "Hey, what does God expect of you today?"
All right.
And it's from the book of Micah, and it's simple, to be humble, to be kind, and to be just. And I would say those were the core emphasis of the way we were raised. I didn't know what I wanted to do, AJ, after school. I mean, I didn't think I knew I was going to play for a long time, which I obviously did not. I started as a freshman in high school. I started as a freshman in college, redshirt freshman. Played my sophomore year, my junior year, got hurt going into my senior year. And honestly, everything just changed pretty drastic. I did not play my senior year, which is probably the first moment when it became clear to me that I was not playing amateur sports, that I was playing professional sports, was the reasons behind the decision that was made had nothing to do with wins and losses that year. It had to do with a bigger narrative.
What was that? You'll have to take. I don't know the history.
So Bobby's late in his career. We had just made someone our head coach in waiting, which was our offensive coordinator. Our offensive coordinator when you think about those dynamics, I'm not a big fan of like head coaches in waiting. When you think about it, there's a lack of alignment because what really matters, like winning today or winning tomorrow.
Yeah.
And those are two
Who's in
different
charge?
answers oftentimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were some decisions made that didn't just affect me, but affected a lot of guys on the team. There was a lot of older receivers and running backs, et cetera, that got less playing time than they otherwise would. Why?
Yeah. Next
Other
year.
guys, right, would get experience. And frankly, those losses were not on the head coach in waiting's head. Those losses
Right.
were on Bobby's head. And so it accelerated, I think, him being gone ultimately. And so I went from starting 3 years in a row to not really playing at all my senior year. And there was never a clear explanation as to why, to scouts, to agents, because what does someone say in that situation? Right? Especially when the guy who did play, who's a good dear friend of mine, Christian Ponder, played as a sophomore. He ended up obviously being good enough to play in the NFL, but he wasn't his sophomore year. So what do coaches say to scouts and to GMs and to agents when the guy who did play wasn't good enough to play in the NFL, and then you have a senior that's sitting on the bench? Like, how do you really explain that? And so I don't blame the coach necessarily because he made a business decision at the end of the day that I do think was helpful to him and his agenda, but it definitely had negative consequences for me going into the draft. So I ended up not being invited to the combine. Had a really great pro day, got picked up as an unsigned free agent to Chicago, played really, really well. Definitely thought I was going to stick, and I just didn't. And I think a big reason why was, well, the guy didn't play last year. How do you keep someone who didn't play? And they tried to blame my injury, but the truth was I like hurt my knee during spring practice, and I was 100% healthy to play during the season. There were just other motives at play. So that was hard. That was a really hard thing to grapple with. I was kind of faced with the decision of like, how do you handle that situation? And I'd like to think I chose the high road and was a good teammate and was on the sideline giving signals and stuff, trying to be supportive, having faith that my opportunity would come during the season. And the truth is, it never really came. I'll never forget the third game of the season. We're playing Wake Forest, and I believe there were 5. You'll have to check the stats here. I believe there were 4 or 5 interceptions thrown that game.
Oh man.
And I still never got in the game.
Did you win? Did Florida State win?
No, we didn't. I don't think.
Oh.
And like, so it didn't make sense. If you let me go in and I play well, they're going to have a really hard time not playing me the next week.
Right.
And so it's interesting. The only game that I ended up playing in was at the end of the season. We're playing Florida in the rain, and we're down by like, I think 2, maybe 3 touchdowns. Our guy gets banged up. He comes over to me and says, "Hey, do you want to go in?" I think he's going to say no. He thinks I'm going to say no. And I'm like, hell yeah. Like, I'm ready to go. Like, of course I'm going to go in and try to play. But at that point, it was like, his guy got experience. Heck, if we beat Florida, great. Maybe I have to play in the bowl game. But at the end of the day, it was like mission accomplished.
If you were to make a bet, take a portfolio of people without backgrounds in college athletics that become athletic directors. You think 5, 10 years from now, we look back and say that was a success. They helped us get college athletics into the future and leap forward? Or will we look back and say that had a lower than average success rate because of the institutional knowledge adapting to the college space was just too difficult? What's your prediction on pro sports people running athletic departments?
First of all, I think that it won't be all of the ADs, but let's call it 50% of them will have a non-traditional background in the future. That's my prediction, that at least 50%. I think it'll be a trend for a while, and then we'll have to see how does it all play out at the end of the day. I do get the sense, and I'm sure you do as well, all of these schools are becoming a little more entrepreneurial about the way that they're thinking about athletics, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
some a
it's
lot.
slow, some a lot, some a little, for sure, and it's moving slow, but these are conversations they would have never private capital in college sports never entertained. They would never creating an LLC to potentially put your athletics department in a for-profit entity, whether they do or they don't, the fact that they're just forming these LLCs is fascinating. Vertically integrating MMR, no one ever thought about that 10 years ago. Now there's a lot of people
Right.
talking about that. So I think because of that, there will absolutely be a huge influx of professional sports operators that put their name in the hat and that win jobs. I do believe that will be a trend. Do they make it or not? Yeah, can they navigate the complexity of a university system and just the dynamics? We'll see. We'll see. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch, and I do think we're gonna get to watch it because I do think they're gonna end up there's gonna be plenty of people like Rob, who's a non-traditional, I think, candidate at USF, not running a professional sports franchise, but not running an athletic department or growing up in an athletic department either. I think we'll see more of it, and, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic to see the type of, value they can create, and the reason why, AJ, is right now there's like this echo chamber in college sports. They all do things the same way, they all listen to each other, they go to the same conferences, and under any circumstance in any industry, that's not a good thing. Diversity of thought and experience is a good thing, generally always, and right now you just don't have it. You just don't have that AD that's taking that chance, that's paying off, and then people following in their footsteps, right? Everyone's got a really sweet gig. I think being an athletic director at a big school is one of the coolest jobs there is.
No, really? Okay, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I look at it and I think, "This is awful." I mean, it's just the politics and they're you know, they get paid worse than the president of a pro sports team while managing 20 sports instead of 1. And they have students, staff, faculty, politicians, taxpayers. I mean, there's so many stakeholders. But I mean, it used to be my dream job, by the way. So I'm contradicting even my own
Yeah,
opinion in the past. You think it's an awesome job. I think it's a terrible job. Help me understand why it's a
I
good
think it's
job.
an I think it's an incredible job. Yes, there is some added complexity, because of the number of sports that you have to deal with, that you have to deal with academics, and you have to deal with the university, but also you outsource a lot of that job too, right? I mean, they leverage a lot of vendors to actually run their business. So, yes, there's an operational component 100%, and it's a hard job. I'm not saying it's not a hard job, but it's a really cool job. And frankly, all of the change makes it more cool and more fun and more of a challenge, and I think creates more opportunity. Like, without all of this disruption, it would be a pretty run-in-the-mill job where you just kinda keep the trains moving on time. I think real entrepreneurs will be attracted to this new environment because of the change, because that's what creates opportunity. That's how you differentiate yourself is in these moments in time. Hence, why there's professional people interested in these jobs. There are a lot
So,
of people that are non-traditional candidates more than ever that I think are interested in college sports. They pay pretty well. They
yeah,
it's not like these guys aren't making money. Like
right, right.
they're making decent. They're making not decent. They're making really good money.
That's a good segue to private equity then, because one of the first things that comes up when people talk about this is governance and reporting structure. And is there a board? And what is the accountability? And are you going to privatize athletics? And I know one of the things your firm is doing is considering investing in athletic departments. So, but I do agree, there's too much on their plate. There isn't executive level support. If I could take one parting punch at the non-traditional hires. And by the way, ironically, we're always pushing people to look to the pro space and best practices. We're absolutely pushing people to be progressive and innovative and accept the risks of mistake and what have you. But it just happens to be in the last couple of weeks here, I've talked with Dave Brannon, who is the athletic director at Michigan, chairman of the board, a big, large public company, major donor, board of the university, very savvy, intelligent individual.
No doubt.
And it didn't work out at Michigan. And maybe it's different now because now they need that rate of change. But there's these consistent stories of not failing because what they were doing was wrong, but just the system being uncomfortable with it. They didn't have the reps.
Pay attention to who you're actually putting on the boards if they're in it for the right reasons. I also think I'm a big proponent too, because running the university is a big job and being a board of trustees member is a big responsibility. And that's 90% of what we focus on is the university, right? 10% of it is athletics. That doesn't mean that the value of it is the same. I'm just saying the amount of time we spend on athletics compared to everything else is probably 90-10. But that 10% is an extremely valuable piece of the overall enterprise of the university. It should be run, and I think governed differently and by different people than the board of trustees. A big proponent of having a separate committee that sits over athletics for a lot of different reasons. But there should be, say it's a board of 5 or 7, there should be boards of trustees members, the most capable that understand what's going on, that should sit on that committee. Just like any other committee, I sit on the student affairs committee. I sit on the finance committee at FSU. I could also sit at the athletic department committee with a few other of my colleagues and have some real professionals also sit there. I think it's good for the coaches. I think it's good for the AD to have a buffer between you and just all the other board members that want to be involved in athletics that don't really know anything. Like right now, it's kind of like open season, like anyone can reach out to the AD whenever they want. I don't think that's very healthy. So I don't know if you've talked to any of your clients about that, but I would be very interested to get your opinion of a governance model like that and the pros and cons.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, people move towards incentives, even if they don't perfectly fit those incentives. And it makes so much sense. I can even give you some examples. You never want to understate the power of Phil Knight and his influence with Oregon, but there are some key board members there that made the effort to separate the flagship state university research institution from everything from community colleges to other four-year colleges around the state. So now Oregon has a board that is just concerned with the University of Oregon. And if you look at it, you could peek online right now and you would see people who went to school there, just as you described for Florida State, who care about the place, have a long-term sort of vested interest, who've done some pretty impressive things and the very diverse perspectives and background, but all with one heck of a incentive and motivation to see what's best for that university. And there's still a lot of states out there where that board is serving over all of higher education in the state. But I would go even further than even you just mentioned. And hopefully you don't disagree with this, given you're in the private equity world, but where are the compensation structures? And any other, to your point, any other $200 million a year business that's highly complex with a lot of pressure, where you're working 2 to 250 nights a year and it's a lifestyle job, you have an equity incentive and there's a reason to create value. And that really offsets and it allows you to take those slings and arrows on day-to-day policy, which you hear from everybody because you're working for the taxpayers in a public institution, to reach for greatness. It's not what we see. We track sort of growth rates across different revenue categories, across college athletics overall. College athletics, the big universities, not just all of them, because the big ones are doing better than the small ones. Big universities in athletics are growing at half the annual compound growth rate of the better run pro sports leagues. And then you say, well, why? Well, they're more popular, of course, right? So when you proportionately look at how popular college athletics is, and I'm talking about major conferences and what have you, they are actually getting just over 50 cents on the dollar relative to their fandom, fan interest, passion, loyalty. It's kind of a mixed metric that we put together. So that's just to be sort of simple about it with the math, but you're getting 50 cents on the dollar and growing at half the rate, not closing the gap is what you'd assume. Yeah, I agree on governance. I think it's a big factor in high functioning businesses and athletic departments and universities. The risk aversion, which we all talk about endlessly in these kind of conversations, where's the incentive structure to do otherwise? What would allow one to reach? And I know you say they get paid well, and we know they get paid well compared to history. But again, you go to the pros, just like college coaching versus pro coaching. You go to the pro sports world and you'll have half as many busy nights, half as many events. No, not half, 1/10 as many events that you should be at or should attend with better support and better compensation. So what's that deal? Why would two equally capable executives choose those paths? You'd be like, you're crazy. Why? What are you doing college for?
Yeah, no. I think
Yeah.
I think you're right, and something's got to change there. I also think on the other end of the spectrum. So you talk about professional sports and how they're out earning, and outgrowing college sports. I also think on the other end of the spectrum, which is an interesting place to look, you look at IMG Academy, a wildly profitable, basically big athletic department, right? With 16 sports. They have 16 different sports, but they also have multiple teams in each sport.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how much you paid attention to this like add more athletes thing, grassroots.
Can I interrupt you for full disclosure? You're on the board of IMG Academy, right?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm on the board, but the only reason why that it's as close to getting to an athletic department as there is on the planet. 1,600. It's actually bigger. There's 1,600, so it's 3 or 4 times as big as most athletic departments, and they're not cash flow break even. I'll put it that way. They're a wildly profitable business that sold for $1.2 billion, and will sell for a lot more than that several years from now.
You think so? Because the growth trajectory. Because I heard the EBITDA multiple was over 20. Like it was an incredible premium.
I'm not going to speak to valuation. It's going to be a great outcome for everybody. So I'm on the board and we're also invested in it. It's going to be a great outcome for everybody involved. But if you look at an athletic department, they have hundreds of millions of dollars of facilities in place and they have one team.
Yeah.
And is there a way to actually think about, I know this is completely opposite of what you guys focus on, but is there a way to actually enterprise and commercialize sport at the bottom end of the market too? Parents have been paying for their kids' youth sports education a lot of money since they're 10 years old. Then all of a sudden you get to university and it's basically intramurals or NCAA sanctioned sports. Is there not a club sports model where you can leverage your existing infrastructure to generate like real money on top of those facilities? I think the answer is yes. And I actually think there's 2 ways of doing it. One is us all collectively advocating that the NCAA change the rule around not being able to play in multi-divisional play in the same sport. So like FSU can't have a softball team, D1, and then a D2 softball team. Why? Like that doesn't make any sense. There are 8 million student athletes every year that graduate high school that play sports, and there's only 500,000 roster spots. There are 7.5 million kids that would love to go play at a school, even if it's on their like second tier team. And guess what? Their parents would pay for it too. They'd be full tuition paying, great grades. You wouldn't have to make exceptions for them on a grade point average because there's so many of them if you wanted to keep the standards high. And guess what? Their parents would actually pay. They just keep paying what they've been paying their whole lives, which is tens of thousands of dollars for them to actually get coached and to grow as an individual. I think that's another way for athletic departments to do something that is like hiding in plain sight, and it's good for everyone involved. Coaches get a chance to have a farm system, basically. You monetize the fixed assets that you actually have in the ground. Maybe you're less dependent on the transfer portal because you actually are like raising up your own talent. You generate real money. Some of these schools raise a lot of money, like football and basketball. Women's golf doesn't raise that much money. A couple $100,000 recurring in fees because you have a JV squad, which I know you can't use that term, but you have a D2 squad or you have a second team, whatever you want to actually call them, I think is a real opportunity for athletic departments. And no one's really thinking about it. There are a few schools out there like High Point moved their club sports division under their athletic department. I believe
Vanderbilt did that at one point, didn't they?
Rice, I believe, has actually done something similar. And so these are all things that if you put the right person in the seat at the athletic department, they'll start thinking about these. There are real ways to generate revenue from the commercialization standpoint that you're so focused on and that you guys are so good on. But there's also a lot of ways to generate money from participation. IMG doesn't have any TV revenue, AJ. Zero.
Yeah.
Zero ticket sales. Zero concessions. How can they sell for $1.2 billion?
Well, I feel like you were just telling me they have a plan to create academies at universities. I'm just joking, but no. The academy
Isn't that
model.
interesting, though? I mean, they don't have
Yeah.
any of
Yeah.
60% of the revenue that college athletic departments get are non-existent at IMG Academy.
More than yet, because there's no donations, right?
No donations either, right?
Yeah.
But they're able to be wildly profitable just through participation.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an idea for some athletic departments to think about.
Well, are you familiar with some of the independent academies? So not attached to an international football club, but like we have a new potential client we're working with that's going to replicate something they built in Africa that's concentrating on 4 major sports. Yeah, look around the world and find untapped potential for talent and the willingness for people to sponsor kids in there, and the funnel of talent. And I agree. So if IMG Academy is worth 1.2 billion and it has 1,600 athletes, we'll stop using Florida State as an example. What is a major Big Ten or SEC athletic department worth?
They're all north of $1 billion.
Yeah. And how is this going to happen? I know this is the core of some investments you're about to make. So what does it look like?
Well, the way we're investing, I would view it as bridge capital, right? Just to be clear, we're not taking equity in any of the universities or any of the opportunities that we're looking at currently. I do think that's likely going to be opportunities in the future to do so. Our financial instrument today is no different than like going to a bank and getting a loan. It's just way more flexible and way more long-term than a traditional loan would be. I am of the opinion that legal issues are going to continue to plague college athletics. I'm not certain that they're going to get anything done in DC. I think it's 50-50. If Congress ends up, giving them protection, right, this could perpetuate. If they don't, the legal liability is going to be pretty significant for these universities. And I think there's a greater likelihood for things to reorganize and for universities to privatize, or maybe even leagues kind of privatize and separate themselves from the NCAA if Congress doesn't help in some way, shape, or form.
What are you rooting for, by the way, on that? You'd like to see that executive order become law, or would you prefer antitrust protection for the NCAA and they get to keep administering this whole thing?
You know what I really hope for most is what's best for the 98% of athletes that are not football and basketball players. Whatever helps conferences reorganize themselves to rationally make sense so that amateur athletics, which is what college sports is supposed to be, can actually operate like amateur athletics. I would make my decision based off of that. What is going to get college athletics back to what it really is supposed to be for the 98% of student athletes that aren't football and basketball players?
So what would do that?
I'm willing to be convinced otherwise. I think that means the best thing to happen is for football and basketball to separate and to reorganize itself outside of the existing conference, outside of the NCAA, so that it would allow the conferences to reorganize themselves geographically, so you don't have someone running track at Rutgers flying to Oregon to run for 10 seconds and then flying all over.
Oh, that doesn't make sense. Huh?
So I think that's what's most important. Right now, what I think is unfortunate, even being a football player, is all the time and attention is being spent on the 2%. It's like, how do we fix this? How do we optimize for this? And as much as I want and believe these guys should get paid, I also think they should be employees, because they are employees. They're being worked like employees. They're being treated like employees. Let's stop fooling ourselves. But none of that can happen unless they separate. So my hope is after we get done figuring out how to deal with the house settlement, we start paying attention to the other 98% of student athletes again and do us in their best interest as well. And I think both can coexist. But right now, that's the best solution I can think of, is to have football and basketball reorganize themselves.
Well, the geography thing is pretty ridiculous, and the travel, and it's pretty taxing on students and athletes, right? People don't travel 3 time zones and thrive. So
I think the biggest selling point to all of it, AJ, is it would fix the transfer portal, which is what everyone hates about college athletics. If you talk to
how would that?
if you talk to 10 people, 9 of them talk about NIL and the transfer portal as the exact same thing. It's really fascinating. They're like, I hate NIL. And you're like, no, you don't. You hate the transfer portal. You just, like, when you actually peel it back, and it's like, if they were employees, they wouldn't be able to they'd be treated like employees, right? We wouldn't be going into the portal and getting 40 new guys every year. I think that would help fandom. I really do. I think that would help the student athletes. I believe they would want to be treated like that, and things would be better off for them if they were treated like that.
Yeah, yeah, but it doesn't seem the solution's going to come from. Well, what's the new transfer window? It's January, so now football coaches, as if they don't have enough going on in December, they're going to be managing their roster and transfer portal and high school age recruiting and a bowl game. And I guess it's to align with semesters, which of course makes sense from the academic side. But yeah, it's not getting there on its own. So
these are all symptoms. These are all the symptoms. They're not the root problem. And
right.
we keep on treating the symptoms. And I'm not naive. This is not simple to fix. But the root problem is not being addressed with any of this stuff. And I think it needs to at some point in time.
Well, let me wrap up with a couple of rapid fire questions. Can I? These will be fun. What is one game memory at Florida State that you will never forget?
It's Boston College 2007. Boston College had just beat Virginia Tech, like last second throw. They were ranked number 2 in the country. And obviously Matt Ryan was a great quarterback, incredible challenge. And it was probably the best game of my career, most clean game that I played. And so I think that was my most fond memory from a performance standpoint. The other one would be we won the ACC championship my redshirt freshman year, which was pretty special, and we were big underdogs against Virginia Tech in that game, and came out with the dub.
Favorite school to play on the road during your time at Florida State?
That's tough. You know what's funny is my favorite places to play, I got my ass kicked, and I love
that. Doesn't make sense.
I love going to the Swamp.
Okay.
It's an incredible environment. Had a lot of friends that went to school there, so that was always really fun. But got smoked when we were there. Those are their best years. That was when kind of their 2 national championship years. And then Clemson's a pretty incredible environment. And we had a hard time. We had a hard time there. But I think the one, if I could pick one that was like the moment that I was the most excited in any stadium, it's Virginia Tech, Enter Sandman, when they're running out onto the field, is pretty incredible. Actually, that it would be the one moment that I think I was the most excited to play football in my life, was when that took place.
That's cool. That's very cool. I like hearing that. Good. We'll pass that on to our friends at Virginia Tech. All right. Greatest piece of advice you received from Bobby Bowden?
He had a different way of saying this, but it's kind of very similar to what Coach Saban would say often. He had a different way of articulating it, but it's basically to be process-oriented, not outcome-oriented. And that is just whether it's in life or whether it's in sports, is to wake up every day and to do the little things well, and to take pride in practice and in your fundamentals, and to not look at the scoreboard, I think is the greatest piece of advice.
I like that. I'm a fan of that too, very much so. Do you have a personal hack on health and wellness, just leading a balanced life, that you'll share with us?
I wake up at 4:30 a.m. and I'm working out at 5 with a big group of people. Actually, believe it or not, AJ, at my house. So there's like 25 people that come to my house every morning at 5. And so I feel fortunate to be able to have a situation where I can do that. But having a gym in your house and having the accountability of people showing up, whether you're there or whether you're not,
Yeah, that's a good,
will help you quite a bit.
that's a good commitment device. Yeah, there's no getting around it. Yeah.
No doubt. So
All right. All right. All right. Last question, I promise here. What are you most excited for in the next year?
I'm excited to see if we can get one of these college deals done.
Oh yeah, you will. Don't you think you will?
I really do. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very optimistic that we will get something done. So if that comes to fruition, to be the first group to find a way to put private capital into college athletics in this way would be pretty special, considering how much time, energy, and effort we've put into it. And also to be the first of doing anything is always pretty fun and unique.
I know you will. I mean, I know you've already been incredibly close, and let's be honest, it's a matter of when, not if. But much like college athletics, much like our entire discussion today, there's a lot of people who'd like to be early. No one who wants to be first. So the dominoes will fall. The dominoes will fall. For everybody listening, if you have any questions or comments, reach out to us anytime. My email is aj@nbgt.com. And you can get us on my LinkedIn page or the Navigate LinkedIn page. But again, this is AJ Maestas with Navigate, joined by Drew Weatherford. And thank you for joining us on Navigating Sports Business.
Thanks, AJ. That was fun.